The Septuagint, Genesis chapter 12. And the Lord said to Abram, Go forth out of thy land, and out of thy kindred, and out of the house of thy father, and come into the land which I will show thee. And I will make thee a great nation, and I will bless thee and magnify thy name, and thou shalt be blessed. And I will bless those that bless thee, and curse those that curse thee. And in thee shall all the tribes of the earth be blessed. And Abram went as the Lord spoke to him, and Lot departed with him. And Abram 75 years old, when he went out of Charan. And Abram took Sarah his wife, and Lot the son of his brother, and all their possessions, as many as they had got, and every soul which they had got in Charan. And they went forth to go into the land of Canaan. And Abram traversed the land lengthwise as far as the place Sichem to the high oak, and the Canaanites then inhabited the land. And the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I will give this land to thy seed. And Abram built an altar there to the Lord, who appeared to him. And he departed thence to the mountain eastward of Bethel. And there he pitched his tent in Bethel near the sea, and Agai toward the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord, and called on the name of the Lord. And Abram departed and went and encamped in the wilderness. And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, because the famine prevailed in the land. And it came to pass, when Abram drew nigh to enter into Egypt, Abram said to Sarah his wife, I know that thou art a fair woman. It shall come to pass then, that when the Egyptians shall see thee, they shall say, This is his wife, and they shall slay me, but they shall save thee alive. Say, therefore, I am his sister, that it may be well with me on account of thee, and my soul shall live because of thee. And it came to pass, when Abram entered into Egypt, the Egyptians having seen his wife, that she was very beautiful, that the princes of Pharaoh saw her, and praised her to Pharaoh, and brought her into the house of Pharaoh. And they treated Abram well on her account, and he had sheep and calves and asses and men servants and women servants and mules and camels. And God afflicted Pharaoh with great and severe afflictions, and his house, because of Sarah, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh, having called Abram, said, What is this thou hast done to me, that thou didst not tell me that she was thy wife? Therefore didst thou say, She is my sister? And I took her for a wife to myself. And now behold, thy wife is before thee. Take her, and go quickly away. And Pharaoh gave charge to men concerning Abram, to join in sending him forward, and his wife, and all that he had. Genesis chapter 13. And Abram went up out of Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot with him, into the wilderness. And Abram was very rich in cattle and silver and gold. And he went to the place whence he came, into the wilderness, as far as Bethel, as far as the place where his tent was before, between Bethel and Agai, to the place of the altar which he built there at first. And Abram there called on the name of the Lord. And Lot, who went out with Abram, had sheep and oxen and tents, and the land was not large enough for them to live together, because their possessions were great, and the land was not large enough for them to live together. And there was a strife between the herdmen of Abram's cattle and the herdmen of Lot's cattle. And the Canaanites and the Perizzites then inhabited the land. And Abram said to Lot, Let there not be a strife between me and thee, and between my herdmen and thy herdmen, for we are brethren. Lo, is not the whole land before thee? Separate thyself from me. If thou goest to the left, I will go to the right. If thou goest to the right, I will go to the left. And Lot, having lifted up his eyes, observed all the country round about Jordan, that it was all watered before God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah as the garden of the Lord, and as the land of Egypt, until thou come to Segorah. And Lot chose for himself all the country round Jordan, and Lot went from the east, and they were separated, each from his brother. And Abram dwelt in the land of Canaan, and Lot dwelt in the city of the neighboring people, and pitched his tent in Sodom. But the men of Sodom were evil, and exceedingly sinful before God. And God said to Abram, after Lot was separated from him, Look up with thine eyes, and behold from the place where thou now art northward, and southward, and eastward, and seaward. For all the land which thou seest, I will give it to thee, and to thy seed forever. And I will make thy seed like the dust of the earth. If anyone is able to number the dust of the earth, then shall thy seed be numbered. Arise and traverse the land, both in the length of it and in the breadth. For to thee will I give it, and to thy seed forever. And Abram, having removed his tent, came and dwelt by the oak of Mamre, which was in Hebron, and he there built an altar to the Lord. Genesis chapter 14. And it came to pass in the reign of Amarphal, king of Shinar, and Iraq, king of Elasar, and Chaldolagomor, king of Elam, and Thargal, king of nations, made war with Bala, king of Sodom, and with Barsa, king of Gomorrah, and with Shinar, king of Adama, and with Simobar, king of Seboim, and the king of Balak. This is Segor. All these men with one consent at the Salt Valley. This is now the Sea of Salt. 12 years they served Chaldolagomor, and 13 years they revolted. And in the 14th year came Chaldolagomor, and the kings with him, and cut to pieces the giants of Astoroth and Karnan, and strong nations with them, and the Omeans in the city save, and the Chorhians in the mountains of Seir, to the turpentine tree of Pharan, which is in the desert, and having turned back they came to dwell of judgment. This is Sades, and they cut in pieces all the princes of Amalek, and the Amorites dwelling in Asenathamar, and the king of Sodom went out, and the king of Gomorrah, and the king of Adumah, and the king of Seboim, and the king of Balak. This is Segor, and they set themselves in array against them for war in the Salt Valley, against Chaldolagomor, king of Elam, and Thargal, king of nations, and Amarphal, king of Shinar, and Iraq, king of Elasar, the 4 kings against the 5. Now the Salt Valley consists of slime pits, and the king of Sodom fled, and the king of Gomorrah, and they fell in there. And they that were left fled to the mountain country, and they took all the Calvary of Sodom and Gomorrah, and all their provisions, and departed. And they took also Lot, the son of Abram's brother, and his baggage, and departed, for he dwelt in Sodom. And one of them that had been rescued came and told Abram the Hebrew, and he dwelt by the oak of Mamre, the Amorite, the brother of Eshcol, and the brother of Eunan, who were confederates with Abram. And Abram, having heard that Lot his nephew had been taken captive, numbered his own homeborn servants, 318, and pursued after them to Dan. And he came upon them by night, and he and his servants, and he smote them, and pursued them as far as Chobah, which is on the left of Damascus. And he recovered all the cavalry of Sodom, and he recovered Lot his nephew, and all his possessions, and the women, and the people. And the king of Sodom went out to meet him, after he returned from the slaughter of Chodolagomor, and the kings with him, to the valley of Sebai. This was the plan of the kings. And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth loaves and wine, and he was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed Abram, and said, Blessed be Abram of the Most High God, who made heaven and earth, and blessed be the Most High God, who delivered thine enemies into thy power. And Abram gave him the tithe of all. And the king of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the men, and take the horses to thyself. And Abram said to the king of Sodom, I will stretch out my hand to the Lord, the Most High God, who made the heaven and the earth, that I will not take from all thy goods, from a string to a shoe latchet, lest thou shouldest say, I have made Abram rich, except what things the young men have eaten, and the portion of the men that went with me, Eshol, Eunan, Mamre, these shall take a portion. Genesis chapter 15. And after these things the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, Fear not, Abram, I shield thee, thy reward shall be very great. And Abram said, Master and Lord, what wilt thou give me? Whereas I am departing without a child, but the son of Mesech, my homeborn female slave. This Eliezer of Damascus is mine heir. And Abram said, I am grieved, since thou hast given me no seed, but my homeborn servant shall succeed me. And immediately there was a voice of the Lord to him, saying, This shall not be thine heir, but he that shall come out of thee shall be thine heir. And he brought him out, and said to him, Look up now to heaven, and count the stars, if thou shalt be able to number them fully. And he said, Thus shall thy seed be. And Abram believed God, and it was counted to him for righteousness. And he said to him, I am God, that brought thee out of the land of the Chaldeans, so as to give thee this land to inherit. And he said, Master and Lord, how shall I know that I shall inherit it? And he said to him, Take for me a heifer in her 3rd year, and a she-goat in her 3rd year, and a ram in his 3rd year, and a dove, and a pigeon. So he took to him all these, and divided them in the midst, and set them opposite to each other. But the birds he did not divide. And the birds came down upon the bodies, even upon the divided parts of them, and Abram sat down by them. And about sunset a trance fell upon Abram, and lo, a great gloomy terror falls upon him. And it was said to Abram, Thou shalt surely know that thy seed shall be a sojourner in a land not their own, and they shall enslave them, and afflict them, and humble them for 400 years. And the nation whomsoever they shall serve I will judge. And after this they shall come forth hither with much property. But thou shalt depart to thy fathers in peace, nourished in a good old age. And in the 4th generation they shall return hither, for the sins of the Amorites are not yet filled up, even until now. And when the sun was about to set, there was a flame, and behold, a smoking furnace, and lamps of fire, which passed between these divided pieces. And that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, To thy seed I will give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river Euphrates. The Kenites, the Kenizzites, and the Kedmonians, and the Chittites, and the Pharishites, and the Raphaim, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Evites, and the Girgasites, and the Jebusites. Genesis chapter 16. And Sarah, the wife of Abram, bore him no children, and she had an Egyptian maid whose name was Agar. And Sarah said to Abram, Behold, the Lord has restrained me from bearing. Go therefore into my maid, that I may get children for myself through her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarah. So Sarah, the wife of Abram, having taken Agar the Egyptian, her handmaid, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, gave her to Abram, her husband, as a wife to him. And he went into Agar, and she conceived, and saw that she was with child, and her mistress was dishonored before her. And Sarah said to Abram, I am injured by thee. I gave my handmaiden into thy bosom, and when I saw that she was with child, I was dishonored before her. The Lord judge between me and thee. And Abram said to Sarah, Behold, thy handmaid is in thy hands. Use her as it may seem good to thee. And Sarah afflicted her, and she fled from her face. And an angel of the Lord found her by the fountain of the water in the wilderness, by the fountain in the way to Sur. And the angel of the Lord said to her, Agar, Sarah's maid, whence comest thou, and whither goest thou? And she said, I am fleeing from the face of my mistress, Sarah. And the angel of the Lord said to her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands. And the angel of the Lord said to her, I will surely multiply thy seed, and it shall not be numbered for multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, and shalt call his name Ishmael. For the Lord hath hearkened to thy humiliation. He shall be a wild man, his hands against all, and the hands of all against him, and he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren. And she called the name of the Lord God, who spoke to her, Thou art God, who seest me. For she said, For I have openly seen him that appeared to me. Therefore she called the well of him whom I have openly seen. Behold, it is between Kadesh and Barad. And Agar bore a son to Abram, and Abram called the name of his son, which Agar bore him, Ishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Agar bore Ishmael to Abram. Genesis chapter 17. And Abram was 99 years old, and the Lord appeared to Abram and said to him, I am thy God, be well pleasing before me, and be blameless. And I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and I will multiply thee exceedingly. And Abram fell upon his face, and God spoke to him, saying, And I, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of a multitude of nations, and thy name shall no more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham, for I have made thee a father of many nations, and I will increase thee very exceedingly, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee, and I will establish my covenant between thee and thy seed after thee, to their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be thy God, and the God of thy seed after thee. And I will give to thee, and to thy seed after thee, the land wherein thou sojournest, even all the land of Canaan, for an everlasting possession. And I will be to them a God. And God said to Abraham, Thou also shalt fully keep my covenant, thou and thy seed after thee, for their generations. And this is the covenant which thou shalt fully keep between me and you, and between thy seed after thee for their generations. Every male of you shall be circumcised, and ye shall be circumcised in the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall be for a sign of a covenant between me and you. And the child of 8 days old shall be circumcised by you, every male throughout your generations. And the servant born in the house, and he that is bought with money, of every son of a stranger, who is not of thy seed, he that is born in thy house, and he that is bought with money, shall be surely circumcised, and my covenant shall be on your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And the uncircumcised male, who shall not be circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin on the 8th day, that soul shall be utterly destroyed from its family, for he has broken my covenant. And God said to Abram, Sarah thy wife, her name shall not be called Sarah, Sarah should be her name. And I will bless her, and give thee a son of her, and I will bless him, and he shall become nations, and kings of nations shall be of him. And Abraham fell upon his face, and laughed, and spoke in his heart, saying, Shall there be a child to one who is 100 years old? And shall Sarah, who is 90 years old, bear? And Abraham said to God, Let this Ishmael live before thee. And God said to Abraham, Yea, behold, Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son, and thou shalt call his name Isaac. And I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, to be a God to him and to his seed after him. And concerning Ishmael, behold, I have heard thee, and behold, I have blessed him, and will increase him, and multiply him exceedingly. 12 nations shall he beget, and I will make him a great nation. But I will establish my covenant with Isaac, whom Sarah shall bear to thee at this time in the next year. And he left off speaking with him, and God went up from Abraham. And Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all his homeborn servants, and all those bought with money, and every male of the men in the house of Abraham, and he circumcised their foreskins in the time of that day, according as God spoke to him. And Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, and Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And at the period of that day Abraham was circumcised, and Ishmael his son, and all the men of his house, both those born in the house and those bought with money of foreign nations.